Today in our hot seat, we have Scott Klein, CEO of LanguageLine Solutions. Hi, Scott. Good to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Okay, Scott, are you ready? Let's do this.
I'm ready. Let's go.
Welcome to C-Suite Hot Seat, the show where we put C-level executives from language service providers of all sizes in the hot seat. We will ask tough questions and get inspired answers. Our hosts today are Sarah Hickey, VP of Research, and Joseph Kabowski, CEO at Nimsy Insights.
So, Scott, in one sentence, tell us, what does your company do?
We help connect people who speak different languages to have a better life.
What's the first career you dreamed of having as a kid?
Being President of the United States.
Wow, ambitious.
Okay.
And the second, which is much more interesting, was I always dreamed about being CEO of LanguageLine.
Obviously. Which child doesn't?
There you go.
Right, exactly.
There you go. Okay. When you're not working, how do you like to spend your time?
Well, I have 4 grandchildren and can never get enough time with them. But I am also fortunate. My wife, Debbie, and I have been married for over 42 years and still love spending every minute I can together with her. I try to find a little bit of time for golf, but unfortunately that doesn't work out often enough. But I do enjoy playing maybe once or twice a month.
Very nice. Kids, sport, wife. Sounds good to me. Sounds good.
It is good.
Beautiful. If you were given a chance to visit 3 different countries, which ones would you choose and why, Scott?
Well, I've been fortunate over the course of my career to have traveled quite a bit and been to many different countries around the world. Some of my favorites are Australia, New Zealand, and in third place, it's really hard to pick just one. I've had incredible experiences on almost every continent. India is special in its own way. China and Russia, were incredible trips that, growing up, I never thought I'd ever have the opportunity to go to either of those countries. But there are just so many wonderful places around the world to visit.
Where, if you were a president, you would have to visit most of those countries, right?
Exactly.
But being a president of the current company, you get the chance as well. So there you go. Both dreams achieved.
You bet.
Excellent. Let's go to the more professional topics. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
This is a piece of advice that I got on my wedding day from my father-in-law. And what he said to me, he said, Scott, you and Debbie aren't always going to agree on everything. And when you have a disagreement, you should rate on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most important, how it rates for each of you. So if it's a 10 for Debbie and a 2 for you, just go along and save your arguments and debates for when it's a 9 or 10 for you. And that bit of advice is just as wonderful in a business setting or a personal setting as it is in a marriage. And I share that often, and I'm confident that it helps everybody else just as much as it's helped me.
I love it, Scott.
By the way, right after that, he said, and no backs. She's yours now.
I'm writing that one down. I really like it. Thanks for sharing it with us.
So yeah, Scott, I feel like we got to know you a little bit better now. We know a little bit more who you are as a person. So now it's time to get into the tougher questions, if you're ready.
I'm ready. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So I'm curious to know, looking back on your career, what was the first breakthrough you had in your personal career? Like a moment where you realized maybe you had to do things differently to advance, or that this was it?
I started my first business when I was 12 years old. And the lessons that I learned back then have only helped to progress my thinking and my career. But many of the things that I found important then are still important today. So, for example, at LanguageLine, we talk about providing total and complete client satisfaction. It was no different than when I was shoveling snow when I was 12 years old or mowing lawns. I wanted my clients' expectations to be exceeded. And that kind of approach has served me and the many companies that I've been involved with very well. Another one is it's always about people. No matter what the business is, it's always about having the best people in the best position all the time and do everything that I possibly can to support them to make sure that they achieve their personal objectives. And there are so many others. I remember when I first became exposed to Lean Six Sigma. Mm-hmm. Now, this was back in 1990, and it was such a game changer. I was at a conference, and I heard a guy who had a relatively small business, but he was lecturing about how process improvement, changed his life. And interestingly enough, his business was selling doorknobs. He sold all different kinds of doorknobs, but by following Lean Six Sigma, he'd been able to squeeze out waste and error from his business, becoming more profitable than he ever was before, being able to deliver for his clients in a way that he had never delivered before. And I actually went and did Lean Six Sigma training at Texas A&M. And that was a total game changer for me in my life, because I then began to look at everything as a process. Mm-hmm. And I was constantly thinking about, taking things apart, breaking it down to the simplest level to figure out what we could do to get better and better over time. And I kind of became a pain in the butt at that time as well, because not only did I look at everything in my professional life that way, I looked at things in my personal life that way. Even to this day, my wife, Debbie, does not like to load the dishwasher because she knows that no matter what she does, I am going to reload it in a way that will make the most efficient use of the space and provide the cleanest dishes. And that's just one example
here. Same experience here.
I love it. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Even though I think it's also a fairly known phenomenon that between anybody, nobody loads the dishwasher the same way. So whenever someone else does it, they always do it wrong. It's just the general rule. But yes, I love your story.
There are specific ways to load a dishwasher that make it work better than if you do it some other way.
It's true. It's true. So I'm curious, you guys are very big in the healthcare sector. I know it's not your only vertical, of course, but it's one of the larger ones. You're well known in that sector. So I'm curious, what made you choose your vertical market?
Don't forget, I came to LanguageLine in 2012. And at the time, the company was about 30 years old. So it had been around for quite some time. Right. And it already at that point had this diversification of industry verticals. But what we saw in those early days was what was happening in healthcare and what was happening in the way of insurance support for healthcare and government support for healthcare. And we made a decision to make that one of our primary focus areas. And as part of that, we made the decision to acquire one of our competitors, Pacific Interpreters, that was 100% healthcare related. And then that was at the very end of 2012. And then in 2013, all of a sudden, there was the talk of the Affordable Care Act, which was known as Obamacare. And we just saw that wave was coming. and that we wanted to ride it. In addition to that, in healthcare in the US, it's the law of the land. I wish it were the law of the land everywhere we do business. But here in the United States, if you go into a hospital, you're entitled to have a professional interpreter there, either by your side in person or virtually by phone or by video to support you in that interaction.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's really outstanding.
And what's happened over time is all the other verticals, while they're not legislated to be able to provide that professional interpreter, we've been able to show all those different industries what the real value is of being able to tap into the multicultural, multilingual opportunity that's out there. So it's healthcare was great, but the other verticals are just as important to us.
It's fair to say that you are very successful in your career because you are the CEO of the third largest language service provider in the world. The NIMSY 100 just confirmed that again. And also the largest interpreting company in the world. So, but looking back on your career, I mean, I'm sure you've had some stumbles as well, like everybody. I'm just making an assumption, but it's only human, right? So I'm wondering, what was maybe something you realized was what you would describe as a failure or a mistake, and what have you learned from it?
Sure. There are many. We only have a half hour, so I will pick just one. As I said before, no matter what the business is, it's all about people. And having the right people in the right job is only part of it. Mm-hmm. It's also making the decision after some reasonable amount of time and support that an individual is going to be successful. And I have a rule of thumb that people deserve an opportunity for at least 12 months to see the entire cycle of business over the course of a year. And by the time they've seen the entire 12-month cycle, they're either going to have positioned themselves to be successful, or they'll have proven themselves not to be. And earlier in my career, I used to give people a lot more runway, meaning I give them, much longer than 12 months. And when I think back, there's only one time in my entire career that I gave somebody more than 12 months and it worked out great, as opposed to the many, many times earlier in my career that I gave people more time and it just didn't work out. So that is, find the best, hire the best, train them as best you can, set aggressive objectives, do everything you can to help those people achieve those objectives. But if after 12 months it hasn't worked out, it's probably not going to work out.
Mm-hmm. Now, looking at the flip side, even though, of course, the two are intertwined, right? Because you described a lesson learned that in turn, I assume, fueled success as well. What was your biggest success or one success? Can you tell us a story?
I could spend a lot of time talking about those as well, although probably more time on the things that didn't work out. But, take a look at LanguageLine. When I joined LanguageLine in the middle of 2012, it was an industry leader in decline. And here we are these years later, and we're almost 5 times larger than we were in 2012.
Wow.
Back then we had about 2,500 linguists. Today we have well over 20,000.
Yeah.
And the business, as you see every year in the rankings, the business has continued to grow very consistently over time through bad economic times, good economic times, through a pandemic. Mm-hmm. And I am so proud of the work that our team has been able to do over that period of time that really makes the difference. I often get the credit. It's not about me. It's really about the team and the way we work together. And I'll tell you a little bit of a fun fact.
Oh, yeah, please.
So we sold LanguageLine to Teleperformance back in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And LanguageLine's leadership team was about 40 people. And the leadership team consists of my direct reports and their direct reports.
Right.
Of those 40 people, all but 3 are still with us these 6+ years later. And the 3 that aren't with us any longer, 2 retired.
Okay.
There's 1 person left after all this time. And that individual left like very early, like within months after we did the deal. And that speaks to our culture. That speaks to the way we work together, the camaraderie, the support that we provide to each other. And that is part of, what I like to refer to as, the secret sauce of LanguageLine.
I was actually going to ask about that, but now I don't need to anymore. So that's good. I know you said you're hyper client focused, right? You want total client satisfaction. You said that from your very first businesses when you were 12 to now as well. But I'm curious, is there also maybe a little bit of do you have any kind of like a pet peeve when it comes to clients?
Well, I love our clients. I sometimes joke that all clients are created equal, but some are more equal than others. But if I had to pick a pet peeve, it would be around pricing. So today, everybody in our business is dealing with the challenge of hiring and retaining people.
Mm-hmm.
Once upon a time, we were unique in that we were primarily a work-at-home business. Today, post-pandemic, we're no longer unique. So that creates a different challenge. But there's no question that wage pressure has made life more challenging for everybody. Yet we have some clients there are some clients that don't understand that we're a human-based business.
Mm-hmm.
We're not doing this work with a computer. And just as they are having to pay higher wages in their business, so are we.
Mm-hmm.
Yet they look to us to reduce our price to make up for the extra money they have to spend to pay people.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating to me that there isn't a recognition that the world has changed, the global economy has changed, and anything that depends on people is going to become more and more expensive over time.
I think I remember you saying that in the past, Scott. It might be even 5 or 6 years ago when talking about the human input and the importance of paying the individual's quality amount of income to make sure that the clients are realizing that what we do for them is there. So thanks for reminding me of that. I think this is a great input.
Because I'm curious, and you went into this a little bit. On the one hand, your leadership style and how you motivate your team, because you already mentioned you're very people focused. So how do you motivate your team?
One of the wonderful things about not only LanguageLine, but the industry as a whole is the sense of purpose that people feel because of the importance of what we do. Mm-hmm. We're dealing with births every day. We're dealing with deaths every day. We're dealing with people buying a home for the first time and needing a mortgage, or they have an insurance claim. So that gives our industry a leg up. But I see my responsibility is to paint what the future looks like, paint what it is that we need to do to get from where we are to where we want to be, mm-hmm. help people realize that what got us to where we are today isn't going to get us to where we aspire to be, and then working together to set very aggressive objectives, and then working as focused a manner as possible to help everyone achieve their individual goals. And if they do, and if we're successful together, there's a financial reward. And sometimes when I talk about the financial rewards, people get a little bit uncomfortable. They'll say, Scott, why do you do what you do? Well, one of the big reasons I do it is for the money. And I want a team that wants that same reward as well. So we are generous with our people when we're successful.
Makes sense. Thank you. Okay, now my last question.
All right, don't make it too hard.
Then you've made it. What advice would you give to young entrepreneurs who are starting their own business in the language industry today?
Over the years, I've done a lot of consulting work as well, and some of it with family businesses. And in our industry, the vast majority of the companies in our industry are family-owned or privately owned businesses. And what I always tell the more senior members of those businesses is don't let your kids come right out of school and go into the family business. And the reason for that is they should get at least one or two other experiences to learn from others so that when they come back to the business, they come back and bring value to the business. Same thing about starting a company. There are some people and they're legendary in how they, in some cases, left college to start a business. Bill Gates would be a great example of that. Others that right after college had some great idea and started a business, but those are the exceptions. And before you start your own business, getting those learning opportunities from other people would be my first piece of advice. Don't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to start a language services company. Get experiences, work for others in the industry, outside the industry, and then you can take what you've learned and give yourself a much greater chance of success. That's
great advice. Thank you, Scott.
My pleasure. Is this where I get to ask you guys questions?
Excellent.
Fire away.
Someday we'll have a hot seat where the CEOs put you guys in the hot seat and ask you these same questions.
Wow, I would love that, actually.
Thank you so much, Scott, for joining us in the hot seat. I hope you didn't sweat too much. If anyone feels like letting off some steam and you are part of the C-suite at a company in the language service industry, sign up with us if you dare to sit in our hot seat.
And for the viewers at home, thank you so much for watching today, and look out for the next episode that will be published as a video on MultiLingual TV and as a podcast on the Nimdzi website. We'll see you there.